Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. I am joined here with Nick John, who looks at XR visualization trends here at Symmetry, and yeah, we're going to be discussing a whole bunch of things. But yeah, we're going to roughly go 20 to 30 minutes or so. If you've got any questions, leave them in the chat, and I'll look to address them in the end. But yeah, how about an introduction really? My name's Craig Schonborn. I'm a client success manager here at Microdesk. I come from a BIM management background in the design side, looking at things like airports, high rises, hotels, residential, the works really. But welcome, Nick, if you wouldn't mind giving an intro.
So yeah, my name is Nick John. I'm the industrial design and biz manager at Symmetry. So predominantly looking after our automotive clients, a lot of our larger kind of industrial design brands as well. But ultimately, a lot of the things which I do transition across both sides of the business, so manufacturing, automotive, engineering, and also AEC. So yeah.
Nice. No, really good. I think this is really important right now, is just to kind of get a place in time really of where we are, as an industry. With your background having automotive and now also architectural design engineering, it's really good to get your insight into really where we are. But to start with, really, could you just kind of give me an insight as to where has the industry sort of come from in the last, say, 5 years?
Yeah. So specifically as it relates to XR and visualization, I'd say the biggest changes, I'd say maybe the last 5 years, but also maybe extending it out to 7, is the quality of the hardware, the price point, and accessibility. So you put those three things together, and with more people with these devices, we find more use cases. More use cases means there is more energy. And the other thing with specific industries like AEC in particular is because there's a bigger push to have 3D content. That means that there's a bigger push to extract more value from that data, and XR is a fantastic way to be able to get more out of those 3D models than just seeing them on screen, to give them a little bit more practical use cases for communication purposes.
Cool. One adjustment. I'm just going to turn on your mic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all right. Cool.
Okay. Yeah, we need that.
No, that's great. I guess a good part is you've got your automotive and manufacturing background. I guess how's that industry taken advantage of the technology?
So the benefit of having a bit of visibility of multiple industries is because everybody approaches these challenges in slightly different ways. Sometimes it's because they are more driven by technology. Sometimes it's finances. They haven't got the money to do certain things. And in other situations, you may just work with certain companies who have got massive innovation departments. So automotive historically have tended to be more on that cutting edge when it comes to visualization. There's a lot of reasons for that. CAD models have always been available. It's a very visual area. We have to kind of design the vehicles and sell the vehicles. And because there's been a kind of a level of appreciation of in-house visualization teams, the question from management and from the industry is, can we do more with this knowledge and these assets? And the answer has been yes. So automotive has been a fantastic journey in the last 10 years, where we've gone from these complex, expensive, almost VR suites. I'm talking at one of the OEMs we work with, £500,000 to install, 3 people kind of keeping it operational. You have to throw the data over 2 days in advance, optimize it, and then you may get something quite good. And there's a huge amount of time that kind of slows you from the data being available to actually reviewing it, to the release of things like the Oculus DK2 is a very good example. Much cheaper, not perfect by all means, but you could see that there was some use cases there where we could now start to get the data in via the software we used, review the data, and be able to improve the level of communication between teams. And decision making went from 3 weeks to a day, and that was with really, in hindsight, questionable hardware. poor frame rates, not the best quality, but there was enough there.
Yes, yes.
And that's really important. You don't need perfection sometimes, it's enough. Is it enough to add value to the process, or is it something which is going to add some value to your business in some way, shape, or form? Don't let the kind of pursuit of perfection get in the way of progress. I say that to everyone. But DK2, and then more recently we've got loads of different headsets from lots of different manufacturers at different price points. We tend to work very closely with a company called Vario, which you know,
Yes.
who for me still provide best in class for enterprise. We use that at pretty much all of the automotive companies we support, for anything from marketing through to color and materials through to even sales and marketing in some situations. But it's been a kind of a wild ride to go from Oculus DK2, which really got people motivated that this could be something in it, to today every single one of our automotive companies uses XR in some capacity in the design process, and it's not magic anymore.
Yes.
It's just a communication tool, and having it, when you start to appreciate it as a utility as opposed to it being a novelty, then people start really seeing the benefits and getting value from it. And that's where we're at with automotive, and we're seeing other industries follow suit.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've always been sort of fascinated by the automotive industry in terms of how they interact with their own design, like on the ergonomic side. Like, that's one of the things that I think isn't taken advantage of enough.
No.
Is, when you're designing these cars, they've got their headsets on, they're sitting in the product,
like a
interacting with the environment, looking at arm's reach, looking at what they can see, looking at blind spots, looking at what about that in this in design, in architecture. I mean, an example I was thinking of was my experience with airports. One of the things is wayfinding, right? So you're navigating the airport, and one of the things that is always a challenge is to make sure anybody at any given time can tell where they are, right? So you look around going, do I know where the toilets are? Do I know where the terminals are? Do I know where? And you can start going, well, short, tall, maybe mobility, passengers, whatever it might be. You can start putting them in situations to start looking at these things. And that's just one example, really.
It's a great example. It's not a good example, it's a great example. So most people investigate VR or XR for a purpose. They've got something that's in their head. We want to do it because we've seen a competitor do it, or we've got a challenge, or we want to do some sort of sales and marketing. But what you've just described there is what we've kind of coined empathy design, which is, I've got a design background, lots of people in our team at Symmetry have got a design background, so we all know how to follow a brief. So we all know what the legislation means. Something has to be at a certain height, or you need a door which is a certain width, all that sort of good stuff. The problem is, when you're designing, sometimes you don't actually put yourself in the footsteps of the user, and everything you just described there, like human factors, is really important. So from an architectural standpoint, I know that a light switch has to be at a certain height, or the airport example, the exit sign has to be at a certain size and lumen values for the lighting of it. Well, if I'm in not necessarily XR, in a real-time environment, I can change my height to, what's the average, 4-year-old? What can they see? What's the average, 95th percentile male, 5th percentile woman in any given kind of territory? And that becomes really valuable now, because as a designer, I'm not just following the brief, I'm now looking at it from that particular user's viewpoint, and I can see different challenges that may occur. I could make it highly populated, I could make it a really busy airport, I can make it empty. So rather than just looking at things in these optimal conditions, you can start to change everything. And this isn't necessarily just XR, this is just real-time visualization in general. Could I add smoke? Could I review the data set with like an eye condition? Could I change the dexterity of the user if they have to pick something up? If I have to press a touch screen, for example, which might be the smart home device. What if I change my hand dexterity, and I can now see what the issues are for someone who might not necessarily have that kind of perfect optimal kind of user? So yeah, you raise good points, and all of this can be done and simulated inside of these environments, and that's what's so powerful about it. It doesn't have to, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, although we can do these incredible, highly choreographed scenes. Sometimes it just has to be good enough to say, oh, I didn't notice that was going to be a problem. Now I do. And as a designer, you can make a change and adjust accordingly.
No, that's true. That's true. I think you might have some stuff you can bring on screen at some point.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll show some stuff in a bit.
But so I guess you've now kind of you've done a crossover. You've got the, like we've discussed now, you know, light switches and so on. Where do you feel the sort of building industry is in compared maybe to the automotive, or like where would you like to see the building industry go in the short term?
It's a tough question because the industry as a kind of a monolith includes the people who've got a huge amount of money.
Yes.
And have got massive motivation to do things, but it also includes people who have got less funds and maybe are in that transition to just digitizing and you know and getting into that kind of space. But the reality is, regardless of whether you're at that point or this point, people make mistakes every single time they go on site.
Yes.
And the question is, well, at some point we need to look at technology as a way to reduce those mistakes and improve communication. 90% of mistakes are miscommunication. They're not because something has broken on site or something has gone wrong. It's just because it wasn't seen early enough. So for me, we should aim to be quite conservative. If you're a smaller company, can you be 1% better with your communication? That's all. It's a simple aim. Can you improve one task? And if you do that once, and then the next quarter take another task, and then another task, all of this stuff compounds over time. If you're a large company where you've got a number of different layers within the business, which might be, you know, servicing, maintenance, health and safety, design, engineering, sales and marketing, well then there's a huge number of miscommunications that happen on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And the other thing is you've got a competitive landscape. So are you doing more than the competition? If not, where are the opportunities? I could say very specific things, but for me, I think just being conservative to say, we have a problem, can we solve it with technology? Yes or no? If it's yes, then we should evaluate what those opportunities are and try and incorporate it into your pipeline, your system, your process, without compromising what you already have, those foundations that you might have built. There's so many analogies you could use for this.
No, it's true. I think the you know, some we touched on actually today with one of our consultants is firstly there's the site visualization. This is just again just touching on the surface or whatever. Site visualization, where you're looking at the well, positioning of equipment and so on. We were looking at some reinforcing. You know, and well, what's that process look like? Where is the machinery that you're going to be using to put it in place? What are the stages? Now, just me seeing it, I'm not an engineer. Obviously, I come from the building industry, but visualizing it, I can start seeing pain points along the way. Well, what is the logistics of how this is going to happen? The health and safety side of it, I think, is
massive,
huge.
Massive.
When you're looking to even look at the maintenance of a building and you're looking at access points, how do you get there? Well, you can point to it on a plan, but a plan doesn't show you almost in. Nobody looks straight down at the ground when they're trying to get to places.
Doesn't give you the information.
And how to access all these safely. And then there's the cool stuff. You know, there's the pretty stuff where you kind of like, well, I want to make things look attractive. I want to, you know, put my design forward and be able to showcase, you know, put it onto a client's, put a headset onto a client, and look what you're going to be paying for is so much more powerful than just obviously looking at a printout or so on. You know,
images, animations, perfectly valid, still useful every single day. But when you've got the ability to use real time and XR, we can show the exact route that people should be walking. We can show the zones. We can allow people to be more immersed, actually go into, well, if I was sat at this desk, which is the route I should be taking. And then you've also got the fact that everybody's got a mobile phone.
Yeah.
So that means that everybody has potentially got a tool which we could use for some of our augmented and mixed reality tools to show them examples of a route. But then we've also got the ability to use that phone or tablet as a portal to kind of show them more information, and that becomes really useful as well. Yeah, health and safety to me is one of these untapped areas. When people think visualization and XR, they think presentation. But the reality is any level of communication can be improved or enhanced by using a visualization asset. And the other thing is, we've just been through the pandemic. Yeah, so we're all used to working on screens and using Teams, and there's definitely something to be said about visualization being a very useful communication tool when we're working in separate offices or separate departments or even different countries, because the beauty of XR, but also visualization in general, is there is no language barriers. Yeah. So you put on a headset, you can understand the scale to a certain extent. We don't need to have these crazy PDFs of step-by-steps, when in reality we could just create an animation or a real-time presentation that contains those steps. They can just walk through it. We kind of know this anecdotally, but we also know this through certain studies, which we can kind of send over to people if they want them. But we've got enough customers within Symmetry that are using these tools and also getting tangible value. So these are things we kind of know. Yeah, and we're still learning as more departments and different industries start using this technology more.
And I think the ease of it is, it's just getting easier all the time, of course.
Yeah,
you know,
every day.
And I think there's so much technology that people are underutilizing with the software already have. You know,
I mean,
it's nuts.
Yeah, exactly. We go back a few years, and we said it earlier, £500,000, 3 people optimizing data, it takes a week to do it. Now, most of the AEC users who've got Revit, they get Twinmotion for free.
Yes. I mean, and that is extremely powerful.
And it might seem like this extra tool that people have to get used to, but the reality is it's not a tool to get used to. It's a tool that people should be thinking, what can it do for me?
Yes.
Do I want to make the same mistakes project after project? Do I want to lose out to competition because they're showing some more innovative presentations, when you've got something that allows you to create incredibly high-end renderings? There's no massive amount of optimization, although when you know what you're doing with Twinmotion, you can be way more intelligent, moving it into Unreal, creating some additional kind of blueprints and do something clever with it. But the point is, this is pretty much the way forward, because everybody who's coming out of university, who's joining these companies that we support, they're going to be more familiar with using these tools. They're going to understand drawings and they're going to understand all the foundational knowledge, but for communication, they're going to want to go towards real time. And that's also the market as well. So people that are buying and making purchasing decisions from the clients we support, they're not going to want to see drawing sheets at some point, because they know that the competition are going to be able to show them something else. And it's like, well, who's presenting the better idea? Sometimes it might be the person with the drawing sheet, but the reality is the quality of the presentation from the other person might kind of be more engaging.
No,
and sometimes it comes down to that. As a designer, I know that. I've designed some crap, some rubbish, but because we presented it in a much more approachable way, we've won the business. It's almost bought us time to refine our design. So,
and there's looking at just decision making. It's easier to make decisions quicker when you've got access to it in that kind of more real time aspect. You don't have to interpret it. It is doing it for you in a lot of ways. I think
on that subject, you're right. From an automotive kind of viewpoint, the reason why we're getting so much value out of this is because we're essentially creating a digital twin. I don't want to use the term loosely because it can be interpreted in lots of ways, but the model is exactly as the physical vehicle would be. The materials that we are using are often scanned, so it's one-to-one of what the physical material samples look like. The lighting has been measured, the materials have been measured, So when you're sitting inside of a design review for an automotive project, just for argument's sake, everything that you're seeing, particularly in a Vario XR3, is as close to reality as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But the benefit is we're not milling out a clay model, all that power, the energy, the manpower, the materials. We are going from CAD model straight into XR, and decisions are being made immediately. And sometimes it's perfect, that's all done, but we might spot something which we wouldn't have noticed until much further down the process. And we can bake that back into the design and then improve the design pretty much at source. And I always use the analogy, the most expensive thing that either of us will probably buy is a house and a car.
Yes.
How many showrooms do we go into nowadays when we're buying a vehicle? The first thing you do is you go online.
Yes, it's true.
So we're making some of our biggest purchasing decisions based on visualization. I know this because our team do it and our clients do it. And the same thing with your house. The first thing that you do with the house, even though it's the biggest decision you'll make, is actually go online. Maybe it's a Matterport scan, maybe it's a 3D rendering if it's off plan. But the point is, these assets, these visualization and XR assets, are providing enough to individuals to make massive decisions. And we all have to kind of appreciate that. Any big decision, yes, can we do it traditionally, whatever that method is, or can we do it with XR? It doesn't have to replace the traditional, it might just be there to enhance the traditional to avoid miscommunications. But
no, for sure. And a point you touched on there was, which leads me sort of into the next question, because we've helped clients understand AI and sort of where it's going and so on. And you mentioned something, and we looked at something earlier. But how do you feel AI at the moment is sort of taking hold of the industry, or where sort of it's starting to touch?
Big question.
Yes.
And also, I'm like the Doc Brown. I'm like the mad scientist within Symmetry for AI. Personally, I think it's really important to avoid the big headlines of it's super positive or it's super negative. And again, really conservative. How can it help me?
Yeah.
Now, for some people, it's going to be, how can it make my strengths stronger? So how can I automate the things I love doing? But the other kind of view is, how can I use this emerging technology to replace the tasks I don't want to do?
Yes.
So everybody, if you kind of take your day and break it up into sections, you probably spend a huge proportion of it on things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Replying to emails, organizing data sets, optimizing data sets, analyzing meeting notes. But the beauty of it is we can use a lot of the technology available right now from OpenAI and Google and Anthropic and all the different tools to simplify and improve the productivity. So that to me is, let's reduce a lot of the tasks we don't want to do so we can spend more time on the things we do enjoy. That's just a general overview. Doesn't matter whether it's AEC, automotive, medical, whatever. But specifically as it relates to XR and visualization, we've got these kind of incredible tools that can do image synthesis and can do it very, very quickly. So I don't want to confuse traditional visualization, that the kind of the real craft of creating a 3ds Max or a Maya V-Ray file with Midjourney or DALL-E or Stable Diffusion, but there are ways to kind of connect the two, some digital assets, some AI, create some really intelligent marketing material, or create some really intelligent storyboards for a project. But then you've got other things like Project Melon from NVIDIA, which is a very strange name, I appreciate that, but that allows us to be inside of a VR scene or an XR scene or a real-time scene and start using just voice commands. I want to see the MEP data, and it removes the things you don't want.
Yes.
I would like to see the architectural data. I would like to see revision 1. I'd like to see revision 2. I'd like to see revision 3. Now, it might seem like a really small thing to use voice activation, but this now changes the way that you interact with this scene or with this digital scene that you've created, because there's no learning curve. You don't have to learn the mouse buttons, the keys, the clicks and picks. You just engage with it in a natural way. And I think that from a kind of the way that we interact with the computers that we use for our daily work, that has got a huge kind of profound impact, because I set up so many VR files with all these variants and different options, and I have to know, click this variant and do this. There's no better interface than natural language. So for me, I think you're going to find a lot of the things people saw with ChatGPT, specifically for text and kind of synthesis, that sort of thing, you're going to see a lot of that for managing presentations.
Yes.
And it's actually available now. This isn't technology which I'm talking about is miles off. This is available today. And again, it goes back to that 1% thing. We've got customers who I'm not going to name who are doing a huge amount of work with a lot of the technology we're discussing. And we've got companies who are very reluctant to use it. And this goes across architects I've visited recently, and I'm talking top level architects, and also automotive, top level automotive. It's also startups. And what they're doing is enhancing everything that they can do with this new technology to gain a competitive advantage. And it's been really interesting. And you know, the one thing we know for certain is the tools, the processes that we used in the last century are not going to be the same as the next.
Yeah.
And I love, if you get to know me, I just talk about analogies. I love little analogies. So you can just stay with the processes that you have right now and avoid all the technology that's available. But this is essentially innovator's dilemma. But if you know that term, but innovator's dilemma is when you kind of don't know when to move into new technology and just do nothing.
Yes.
And then the world passes you by. This happens to Nokia, for example, with the smartphone. You know, Apple arrived in 2007.
It's so common. Yeah.
Killed the biggest company in the world in mobile. Lehman Brothers in 2008, biggest investment bank in the world, gone. It just shows how fragile things are. But then you can take Kodak. Kodak are a great one.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get my dates wrong, but Kodak invented the digital camera.
Yes.
And they didn't use it because I wanted to protect the legacy business.
Yeah.
And they had 150 years of history, 150,000 employees. And I think the same year, Instagram was acquired by Meta for 1.2 billion. And that business was all about digital images. Kodak died. The new technology, or the new kind of platform, has thrived massively. And Instagram's one of the biggest social networks in the world right now. And it just kind of goes to prove, I think it was like 12 people. It goes to prove companies that can pivot and use new technology can gain competitive advantage over even the biggest businesses in the world. And I think to avoid being fragile, you have to have some level of innovation within the business. And we're finding that XR is a great way of doing that. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you shouldn't necessarily always aim for perfection, just need to be better. We know this because we've got automotive startups that have got no ambition to build models. They haven't got a manufacturing facility. They don't have, I guess, prototyping capacity. They are 100% digital models, digital visualization, no photography. All of the design reviews are done in real time using VRED and Unreal and Unity, predominantly VRED and Unreal. And the design reviews you put on your Vario headset, and it just moves on to the next phase. And it's amazing because the speed is crazy, and these startups are competing with the blue chips.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see AEC architectural in particular be very similar. You're going to see very small architectural teams, super motivated, super talented, are going to compete with the biggest because they've got a very good understanding of technology, but also the foundational knowledge. So yeah, super interested in that sense.
I think that leads well on to the next question, really, is how can we help clients, potential clients?
Yep.
And how are we helping clients at the moment?
So yeah, we can definitely help clients. So within Symmetry, you've got my team, which is solely focused on industrial design and viz, where we've got multiple people with expertise in not only the hardware, which is important, but the general process of creating a good XR strategy, because it isn't a case of buy a headset, get some software, and you can do it. You can, but you should also think about how much of the business can you affect with this one change. And what we find is someone buys it for marketing. They go to an event, the DCW for argument's sake, and they're like, oh, this is pretty good for design review. Now all of a sudden the same equipment is being used for marketing and design review. Then someone comes in as a supplier and they're like, oh, this is really good for supplier relations. And now this technology is being used in multiple different areas: design, engineering, marketing, sales, and just general communication. And it serves as a bit of a glue to avoid miscommunications between departments. Then with that strategy, we kind of try and help people. We've got our own technology, like the visualization table, which again we can send links to people that are in this this presentation too. So we're building our own technology, we're building our own software and hardware. The tools and technology that are available just generally we can support, but then we will just come in and also do just a pure strategy meeting. We'll try and work out alongside our customers where the gaps are, because they might not know them, and no one knows more about your business than you guys do. And we'll very carefully analyze where there's opportunities, some low cost, some free, some might be a little bit more complicated to implement. And it could be anything across health and safety through to sales and marketing, from design. And we're doing that with pretty much all of our customers that are kind of on this, what would you call it, this journey, I guess.
Yes, yeah, that's fair.
And the benefit is with Symmetry, we're not solely focused on architecture. We can take the knowledge that we gain from engineering and we can say, that's a really good way of optimizing data, and then we can use that in AEC.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Is we've got to look at across so many different industries.
We're uniquely positioned. Symmetry are a completely uniquely positioned business in the fact that we've got these domain expertise in, your area, my area, industrial design and automotive. We've got a rich history of employees that have worked, at Unity and Autodesk, and all of that knowledge puts us in a great position to actually genuinely advise people. We're not solely talking Autodesk or Unity or Unreal or Vario or HTC. We try and find the best solution for every company at the appropriate kind of entry point. It might be based on price, they might have a project, they may have R&D department.
Yes.
And increasingly we're just getting really interesting conversations stimulated by people seeing what we're doing on social media. It's like, well, could we do some of that? And a lot of it is just awareness. People don't realize what they can do with their CAD models and what they can do with the data and the wisdom that they've got in their business.
So I think that kind of leads us towards really out of time, really.
Oh, okay. All right. That's a shame.
But I think for everybody is just marketing will be in touch, with everybody on the call. There are a couple of questions that come in that is quite in depth of a question, and I think that's more of one that you can maybe take on from making an appointment with yourself. So marketing will be in touch, make an appointment, something like a half-an-hour conversation. Can be casual, can be focused, whatever it might be. But
I mean, what I would say, I'm not sure how many businesses are on the call or what the range of personas are, but there really isn't, to my knowledge, that we found so far, that isn't a category or a size or scale of business that won't benefit from having some conversations internally and then with us about how this technology and just general innovation can be, I guess, deployed within their businesses. And because we've been working so much with startups in the last year or so, we're seeing even more opportunities for people to kind of use this technology accurately, cost efficiently, to add benefits in the business. This is not creating pretty pictures or novelty anymore. This is, a few hundred quid in some situations for a headset. Most people have already got something like Twinmotion. There's your start point. So it's a case of just knowing what you've got is sometimes the only thing we need to talk about. People can get on with it. in other situations. Of course, it's a little bit more in depth, but
nice.
Yeah.
No, I think that's it. Like I said, marketing will be in touch, and thank you everybody for joining. And thank
thanks.
you, Nick,
No, thanks for having me.
this. And
Jonathan
great.
Ross of Symmetry.
Yeah, great. Cool. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye bye.